Welcome to the Mindfulness of Singing, and I'm Denise, your sassy, spunky scientist.
And I'm Tony, your bubbly, big-hearted flower child.
Our podcast features practical tips and tools for a journey of transformation using the healing power of your voice.
Each podcast, we will delve into the mind, body, and spirit connection by interviewing inspirational guests, sharing personal stories, and discussing the most recent scientific research.
Tune in and join our community of mindful singers. Hello, Miss Crowder.
Good morning, Denise. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great.
I am great as well.
So, do you have a subject today that you want to talk about, or should I don't know, you usually bring the subject, but I actually have one today too. So
Well,
let's talk about yours.
I always have plenty of subjects, but
Yes.
I am fired up and excited about our guest today because it's on spirituality, and I'm digging that. And in my early morning walk in the cold, I actually spent some time with Jay, and I'm going to steal two of his stories as a setup for our listeners. And the first one is that sometimes I think people think, well, I can't meditate. I don't know how to. There's so many different practices, or, I'd like to embrace mysticism, but do I go join an ashram, or which spiritual do I study the Bhagavad Gita, go back to my Christian roots if they've left that path, or Catholic mysticism? Anyway, there's so many things to choose from.
Although
And
you
he's
can be Christian or Catholic
absolutely,
and still do meditation.
absolutely. And Jesus meditated. So, I mean, hey, there's nothing wrong with that. So, but anyway, all different forms. My point was just to say that there's mysticism even in Christianity too, and sometimes that's not necessarily embraced. Anyway, so what Jay said is it would be kind of like a child saying, I want to play an instrument, but I don't know which instrument I want to play, so I'm going to wait till the exact instrument speaks to me. And when they're 90 years old, they still haven't played an instrument, and you just need to start. Just pick one up and see. The only way to find out whether or not it speaks to you is to step in and get wet and try it out. So I thought that was good advice for people that might be hesitant. And I hope, as you just said, I know a lot of our listeners may come from a Christian background, as we both do, to let them at ease that this is not going to deter them from their path or anything like that. So to embrace it. And one other story, and then I'll let you get to yours. In a different episode that I listened to of him, he said that meditation is like brushing and flossing your teeth for the mind. And the Buddha went under a tree and sat, and Jesus went away and sat, and every other major faith group has an element of meditation in it. So it's not as woo-woo as some might think. And step in and go. So I made that pretty fast, didn't I, Denise?
You did a good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we're going to talk a lot about those things when we talk to Jay. So I'm not going to expound. I'll just let that sit.
Okay.
So what I want to talk about is something kind of, maybe some people might go, well, that's weird, that Tony and I have both started doing recently, and it's called rucksacking. So there's this kind of trend in fitness where if you're a walker, you have to walk a lot of steps to burn some decent calories. And so rucksacking is where you take like a military style or just any kind of a pretty hefty backpack. And by the way, it should close at your chest, and it should close around your waist so that you're evenly distributing the weight. And then you put 1/10 of your body weight in that bag. So I couldn't find like 12.9, I just gave away my weight, but that's okay. I couldn't find that. So the closest I could get was like 16 pounds, which is a lot more than 10% of my body weight. But anyway, and you burn twice the calories. And so you can walk half the time. if you want to just burn the same amount of calories, or you could walk the same, you could do the same 10,000 steps, but burn twice the calories. And then Tony and I also have added Nordic poles, but listen, maybe not do that at first. Get used to the backpack. I think we're crazy. So try the backpack first, and then to pick up some Nordic poles, and we can talk about the Nordic poles later. But because there's a technique and a skill to those. You don't just, well, unless you're really arrogant like the two of us, you don't just go out and just go, I can do this. Yeah, well, no. It looks easy, but it isn't. So you got to watch some videos and stuff like that on, but that burns another additional 25% with not as much work as the backpack. So if you want to start with the Nordic poles, I suggest that you look at YouTube videos and figure that out. And you can buy a pair for relatively inexpensive. I think Tony bought hers at Walmart for like $20. I bought mine
Yep.
for $20 at Target. Um, because I won't go in a Walmart. But anyway, you can find them relatively inexpensive, or you can buy them real. If you buy the Nordic brand, they're pricey. But I'd say if you're just trying it out and you want to see if you like it, then buy a cheaper pair. But watch a lot of videos, figure out how to do it, practice it before you go lugging those poles around and then want to throw them in the river or whatever, or out in the woods. But and you can do it on a trail, on a smooth surface. But anyway, so rucksacking, it's hard. You think, oh, this is no big deal. I carry this kind of, books in my backpack all the time. But if you go at a pretty decent pace and you give yourself, like, I'm in Virginia, Tony's in Arkansas. Tony, are you in a, I can't remember. Is is that pretty hilly where you are, or because there are
Not
parts
right.
of Arkansas that's really hilly,
It
but
varies. We've got it all in Arkansas. It varies.
right, but where you are, what is, are you flat?
Right where my mother's house is and where
Yeah.
I'm walking is fairly
Yeah.
flat.
Okay. All right. Well, where I am, there is no such thing as flat. So, uh,
Mm.
I had some pretty big hills, like, and going up those hills that was a challenge, and I was sore. I couldn't believe it. The day after, I was sore. I expected to be sore like in my legs or whatever, but I wasn't. I was sore in my hips. I was sore in my in the inner part of my thighs and in my calves. I hardly ever am sore in my calves. So I was really surprised at the places that I was sore in, because I I haven't been sore in a long time from working out or whatever, but I was really pretty surprised that I had soreness in places I don't normally, from working out, get sore, like in my hips and in the inner part of my thigh. And so you're working some muscles you don't normally work. And I was hot. I mean, it's cold here, but I was sweating. I was hot. I couldn't wait to shed some clothes, and um all I was doing was walking. So if you don't like to run, I hate to run, but I'll do it. But I don't like it. I fired a trainer once for making me run, because I
That's
told
a
him,
true
if you,
story.
yeah, it is. If you ever make me run, and you're fired. And he
Mm-mm.
forgot, and he said, "Go run, blah blah blah." And I went, You're fired. I told you I will not run. I don't like to run. Um, I I don't like it. But if you don't like to run and you want to up your game a little bit and you're walking and you feel like, you've kind of plateaued in your fitness and you want to do something to kind of help you not plateau, then I highly suggest rucksacking. What's your experience?
Two things I want to say. I'm glad to hear you say that the polls were a little bit challenging because I was feeling rather stupid. Like, oh my gosh, this is more to it than it might appear. But I'm still just experientially learning. Just
Have you
watch some
watched any
videos.
videos for
I
it?
have, I have,
Yeah.
I have.
Yeah, you didn't the first time, and I didn't the first time, and Tony was doing something really bizarre, and I was doing something as bizarre also. And both of us had these preconceived notions of what it would be. And so, yeah, don't don't go out there with them. Any and people who walk by that know Nordic trekking will be looking at you like, what the, who the? Oh my Lord, what does she think she's doing? So don't look like a fool out on the trail.
Yep.
Find out how to do it.
Now I say go look like a fool and get busy and try. So we different approach on that.
No, no, do the video first. Watch some
Mhm.
videos, learn about it, and then do it right because I think more often than not, people try something, they don't do it right, they get frustrated, and then they never go back to it. So
True, true.
so just do it right the first time. Don't be arrogant like the two of us and think, "Oh, I can do this. How hard could this be?" And I tend to do that kind of thing all the time. It's a flaw. I know it's a flaw, but hey.
Well, thanks for validating me that I'm not completely stupid and you found it challenging too. Not challenging as in hard. Don't
N-
misunderstand us. We both can walk forever. But
Well,
the coordination of what you're supposed to do with it to get
well,
effective
no,
benefit.
that part I didn't find hard. That
Yeah,
part,
yeah, yeah, that's what I'm
yeah,
saying.
yeah,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
part, the coordination of it, I didn't find hard. It was, and it was the fact that I thought I was supposed to be using it one way, and felt frustrated in that so I'll just say I had them out in front of me, like, and
I get
trying
it.
to get them to line up with the quickness of my step. I mean, it gives you a workout because you're working your arms, but at the same time, I could tell it was no way that could be right, that it wasn't the way it should be. And so when I came back, sure enough, they're not supposed to be in front, they're supposed to be in back. And so and then I was like, oh yeah, of course, this is why it couldn't, I couldn't get it to be as quick as my step, is because there's so much lag time by the time you pick something up and put it down, your legs are already gone. So anyway, yeah. All
Steph,
right.
one of the
Yes.
thing, and as our guest here, we have a moment. We have a moment.
Our guest is not here yet, but
Okay,
will be.
so, and as far as the rucksack,
Mm-hmm.
I'm a minimalist and I'm also really environmentally conscious. So I try to buy as few things as I can. And so I went first to a secondhand sports store. And even secondhand, those are pretty pricey. I was surprised. Now I'm talking about not the rucksack, but the weighted vest where you actually have the pouches where you can adjust the weight. It was big and I'm trying to keep mental because I'm not going to be here forever. And so that didn't work. And I already had a backpack here and I already had weights. And so I'm just using books and you can make it more balanced. I know, Denise, we talked about this about injuring your back because if you have just a 20-pound weight in the bottom of the backpack, you might not be so balanced. That doesn't bother me. I've tried books. I'm not getting the fatigue yet. So maybe I need to go find some hills around here and see if that can, because I've done both and neither one kind of, I must not be, maybe I don't have enough weight in it. But anyway, experiment, go play. Part of our philosophy is play. Get out there and try and learn too about what you're going to play. So that kind of
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, you know, I don't have one of those I don't have what I have is my backpack. I have a military style, you know, trek across the country kind of, and I found it. Where did I buy it? Oh, I think I bought it at Target also, and it was $40.
yeah. Good
Tony
for you.
wants to give $5.99 for it, but
I know.
I
I already have this. I don't need another one. I'm not going to take it with me. So just this works.
yeah, because she treks all across Italy, and so
Yeah, I don't want to trek. My trekking poles are very collapsible. I mean, I make sure that what I buy I can carry with me because this is
she
it. This
because
is my car.
she's the vagabond who lives off and on in Italy and treks across there on foot mostly.
Yep. Hey,
Yeah.
Denise, let's
Yeah.
introduce our guest. You want to talk about Jay a little
Yes,
bit?
I do. So, Jay Weik is a Buddhist monk, and so is his wife, which I find fascinating. And the first time I met them, they were both bald, and by choice. And I was like, wow, these two are really cool. I like them. I was drawn to them immediately. Jay and I taught at the University of Toledo. He's in the jazz department. And of course, I was running the voice department. And we we liked each other right away. And he's just a real calming presence. He's always calm. He's never, I think I've seen him mad once, and it was for a really good reason. But other than that, Jay is a very calming um presence about him. He is one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. Everybody says that about him. And um I asked him if he would help me learn meditation because okay, so here's my meditation story. When I was in graduate school, when you and I first met back in the day, long time ago, boys and
Last
girls.
week.
Yeah, no. In a different millennia, we met, and I was trying out meditation, hesitant to do so because of my Judeo-Christian background and my evangelical background. I was brainwashed to believe that meditation was something that would invite demons in because you totally empty your mind and then demons can enter. Stupid. Really, really stupid. But brainwashed to believe that and brainwashed to believe a lot of things that are stupid. But anyway, that's another podcast. So I really thought, was hesitant to do it, but I knew I was so stressed. I was in a crappy marriage and also just in so much stress and grad in that master's degree. Uh, Anyway, that's also another podcast. But anyway, so I tried meditation and I would just fall asleep. I'd be in the middle of I'd wake up, an hour later in my little lotus position, dead asleep and be like, "Well, damn it. That didn't do me any good." But I was staying up till like 2 or 3 in the morning doing papers and things like that and like I said, really stressed. So I must have needed the sleep more than I needed the meditation, but I ultimately gave up. I knew no one who meditated, no one. I just brought home a little book from Barnes and Nobles that was tiny and, tried to do that. Gave up. And then many, many years later, I meet Jay and I'm like, I tried it once. I fell asleep. Do you think you could teach me? And he's like, actually, yeah, and I forget what day it was, but maybe it was Tuesday. Every Tuesday, I go up to a meditation room that's at the religion center on campus. And there's a room up there for people who want to meditate. And I go up there at noon on such and such day, and anybody who wants to meet me up there can do it. And so I would go with him, and I tried that for a while, and I was like, okay, all right, it helps to have somebody, sort of help you with it. But I still couldn't really calm my stinking monkey brain down or whatever. So since then, he'll be glad to know that I've gone back to it and that I'm actually been meditating for about a year and a half now. Maybe more. Maybe it's been 2. But I've been doing a lot of meditation and have sort of finally figured out my type, my kind that I need for the way that I operate. And Jay runs the Mindfulness Institute. Is something he started and runs it at the University of Toledo, and we also are in an ensemble together called the Zen Music Arts Ensemble, Zen Arts maybe Zen Arts Ensemble. Where there's a CD out there of it. It's pretty cool, and what he does is you can find it on iTunes, all of that. And what he does is we don't rehearse. He's the leader. He hands out he hands out words, and it's usually from some sort of Buddhist sacred text, some meditations, something like that. And it's him. He's a guitarist, and by the way, his music background comes from Berkeley, so he's the real deal. He's a really great guitarist. Um, and there's a percussionist who plays all kinds of different percussion instruments, like some really, stuff I've never seen or heard of before. He plays all of those. And then we had, I think on this CD, there is a woodwind player who plays a variety of kinds of unique flutes. And I can't remember if he played it oboe on that or not, but anyway, he played some very interesting reed instruments, but they were flute type,
Probably Indian flutes.
Yep, yep. And then there's a bass player and and then 2 singers. And one of the singers is a jazz singer and the other one is me. And there's no practicing. You don't rehearse. He just goes. And before you know it, you're in this really cool groove. And the other singer, Kim Bueller and I, we don't plan who's going to go or who's going to sing. One of us just begins, and it is a very cool experience, and the CD itself is quite interesting. And if you are, listening to this and you want to have a really cool ensemble come, we would love to come. And not only that, but we've been to schools and done that, and he brings students up on the stage and invites them to perform with us and helps them get comfortable with improvisation and how to improvise. And so it's a very awesome thing.
So,
Zen Arts Ensemble.
so Denise, you said there's a CD. Do you like actually stop and start and change keys? I mean, does it's one flow? It's one.
It's one long flow. Now, I
Wow.
think when he created the CD, there are tracks. He made
Artificial
he made
places
it.
to.
Yeah, but in the performance, no, there's no
It
starting and
wasn't like
stopping.
wow.
It's one long 40-minute improvisation. No one. And you'd be amazed. You would think you would really and truly think that it had been composed.
Wow.
And
That's
so this is
beautiful.
part of what he does. And this is the first time I did it, scared half out of my mind. I'm like,
I like.
wait, there's no rehearsal? What? We're
Well,
just doing it? I'm just going out there? Oh my God, with a jazz singer? Come on. But she is my favorite jazz singer. So I was happy to be up there with her. But but yeah, it's it's intense, but it's very cool. So,
it sounds like I will have to check it out.
okay. Jay White, I'm so happy to see you.
Hey, honey, it's mutual. Oh my gosh.
Man, okay, so I think I haven't seen you now in almost 2 years. It's been too long. We
That's
were
ridiculous. But that
we were
is how it is, isn't it?
trying, yeah. We were trying to see each other, right? We were talking about you coming here to
Yeah.
Virginia, and
We
then
hatched a beautiful plan to bring the Zen Arts Ensemble down to where y'all are and do some music, and I hope to do that.
me too. And then the world blew up. So we're just stuck in a non-Zen place, but trying to be Zen every day. I,
Well, we can talk about that a little bit. How about?
yeah, absolutely. Well, I
Great.
was going to say, and it's one of the things about COVID, and I don't mean to be flippant. I know a lot of people have lost loved ones, and it's really terrible and awful. But I am sort of grateful that it occurred, just because it actually allowed me to have some time to practice more mindfulness and practice my own meditation my own meditation practice, which, back in Toledo, you were trying to help me with, and I was really frustrated with it at the time.
Well,
Um,
a few of these gray beards here are yours.
I bet that's true. I bet it's
oh
so
well,
true.
for a lot of reasons besides meditation, but I have finally found my groove. I want you to know, and I have finally found a practice that works for me and my crazy monkey brain.
Well, good on you, honey. That's fantastic.
Yeah,
One of the things is that for every situation, whatever the situation is, there's always a yin and a yang, right? And there's no place on the playing board that isn't some combination thereof, And so, whatever position we're in, there's advantages and difficulties, And one of the big skills is to be able to recognize the terrain you're in and wield it well. So, playing to the strengths of the moment, not trying to play to the strengths of the moment yesterday, because now, hey, we're on a different space in the playing field. So this pandemic has been a major shift, obviously, in everybody's game. But there are advantages, like you say. There are horrible drawbacks. It's a wretched thing to be going through in so many countless ways, and there is some wind in the sails for some other stuff.
right.
Nicely said. Like the way you put that.
Yeah. So let's think about if our listeners are going, I don't know about meditation. I come from an evangelical Christian background where, I'm taught that it has to be prayer or nothing because emptying the mind might make some evil spirit come around or whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
that was my taught. I was taught that. That's what I was grown up to believe, brought up to believe. And so it took me a while to get over the hurdle of that. So,
Well, let's go there.
yeah,
A
let's
couple of
go.
things. Firstly, we're not really trying to empty the mind, ironically enough. What we're doing is we're concentrating. So, mindfulness specifically is non judgmental awareness in the present moment. So, I've heard this view before that if you empty the mind, then difficult entities can enter and muck about, and it's a bad thing. And that's I don't know whether that's actually true or not. I can't say, but what I do know is we're not trying to empty the mind. What we're simply doing is letting our awareness rest on our breath, kind of the same way when you let your awareness rest on scripture if you're reading it, or on a movie if you're checking it out, or in the conversation if it's worth it. You're letting your awareness rest in the conversation. So there's no great beckoning for trouble in that. But what we are doing, see, is instead of letting the environment steer what takes our attention, we're deciding to cultivate the ability to put our awareness there ourselves. So, and it turns out that being able to put your mind where you want it for as long as you want it to be is a developable skill. And that developable skill is called mindfulness. And what most of us experience is we are very mindful when the circumstances make it interesting for us or scary for us, right? If it's really scary, you are mindful. When that truck starts to skid off the meridian and head your way, you are very mindful. You're suddenly right there. Or when things are feeling really good in one way or the next, you tend to tune in. But the ability to tune in regardless of the content of the moment, well, now that's called mindfulness, and that's something we practice.
Yeah, that's great. That's very, very well put. So what would you say to a musician who's not practiced? Where would you tell them to start?
I think the same place I'd tell our evangelical friend who's got some stress. I mean, whether you're a musician or a construction worker or an overwhelmed single mom, the fact is we're all in a body. And at least at the moment, that's how it seems to us, right? And so what we want to do is use something that's ordinary, simple, everyday, super accessible, always with us, see? And so that's the breath, right? That's the breath. So what we do is we put our attention and our awareness and we use the breath as an object of concentration. Now, in fairness, you can use anything, like someone who's at prayer. Well, you know what? If the more of your awareness you can bring to the prayer, the more mindful you're praying, the better the prayer is in a certain point of view. So what you do with the awareness, whether it's music making, doing scripture studies or studying Nietzsche if you want to, whatever you do, it's your choice. But the breath turns out to be the single most important beginning step. Why? Because, well, if we're here, we're breathing. And then also it turns out that when you learn to work with your breath and be aware of your breath, you have your hands on the knobs and dials of your nervous system and of your body in different ways. And so instead of things escalating, for example, like performance anxiety or a conversation suddenly and intensely gone sideways that you did not see coming, the outcome of which matters a lot to you, all of these things rush energy up into the system. And so if we can train our awareness on the breath and use the breath to keep us grounded and centered, well, then we're going to have a more likely opportunity to respond well to the crazy sideways conversation or to the truck veering off in our direction or whatever else it is, getting up there and going ahead and singing your aria or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You are singing our song because we are both huge fans of breathwork because it does combine to me both science and spirituality and that present moment. There's nothing more present than that immediate breath. I'm curious if you use breathwork with your students. in
Oh,
your
intensely.
highest ten?
Oh, sure. I mean, now I wear a number of hats, so when we say students, I just need to put a little weird qualifier there. I have several different spaces wherein I'm known as a guide. One of them is in the music department at the University of Toledo, noble and venerable institution. And then another one is I'm a martial art teacher. I practice an art called Aikido, and I've been doing martial arts since the 70s. And
That's right. I forgot you're a black belt.
I'm a 6th-degree black belt. Yeah,
Whoa.
Oh,
yeah,
look
Is
yeah.
out!
a bad dude.
Oh, and I'm yeah, and I'm probably one of the most nonviolent folk you'll ever run into, but upon need.
And if
No,
anybody doesn't know what that is, if you've ever watched any Walking Dead, if you ever remember the very Zen African American guy who had the pole and
yeah,
wouldn't
the jail
carry a
cell.
gun or anything like that, and he had a stick, he was practicing Aikido.
That's right, and it's translated as the art of peace, and it's actually, to my knowledge, it's the only non-violent martial art. It actually is a martial art, but it has a moral and ethical basis of doing no harm. Figure that, right?
Yeah.
So yes, I use breath with my guitar students. I use breath with my history of jazz students. They're freaking out over the content. I use breath with my Aikido students, and definitely in my role as a Zen teacher. Breath is like our central practice. And the Toledo Mindfulness Institute, that's another thing I do where I run mindfulness classes online and stuff these days. Breath is right in the beginning of all those things. See, that's why I'm so quick to notice that it's a commonality. Then, whatever your discipline is, okay, you can apply it to that discipline. See, now I think singing folk have a huge advantage in this because y'all have paid a lot of attention to the breath and to the body. And you just can't do what y'all do if you're not in your body. I mean, I would think, is that right? I'm no
No,
singer.
you're right. I mean, people try, but it's not wise. It's not
Not
wise.
wise.
It's
and
not the
and
advice we would give them.
and sometimes overtrained in the wrong way as far as concepts
Yeah,
about
yeah,
breath.
yeah, yeah. Over breath, over breathing is not great either. So, you know,
Hmm.
it's a fine line of being very present about the breath.
That's super interesting. And I assume there are different disciplines within the classical voice tradition.
I mean, there is, but it's funny because we all believe the same basic thing, and that is that you have to have adequate air,
Hmm.
and you have to know how to
Sustain.
expel the air in a way that's efficient, and you ration it and those things. But how you go about that, if you had 10 teachers in the room, you'd have 10 explanations probably.
Wow.
So, yeah, so there are all these different schools of teaching. There's the German school, there's the Italian school, there's even a French and an English and an American school. And so
Yeah.
people come from the tradition of whatever their teacher taught them, and they don't like to let go of that notion. So, and people are afraid they're wrong, and they don't want to have that discussion much. But um the thing is that for me, for my students, I know, and because Jay, I think you can attest to this, are seeing about 3 years ago, I would say, in the higher ed teaching space, we
Hmm.
began to see students with more and more anxiety.
Oh yeah. Big time.
Okay.
And I'm
Yeah.
sure that's lessened of late.
No. Right. Yeah. No. Exactly. And so uh, I I started really thinking about how breathing for singing could cause more of that, and over singing, basically hyperventilation,
Hmm.
causes you to feel far even more anxious. And if you're already anxious, then it's a huge, catch 22. So
That
I've
makes a
started
lot of
doing
sense.
breath work with my students in the studio first before we even sing, to sort of calm down the nervous system, help them be focused about their body, and have been treating the breath for singing to be more like a breath work than it is for anything else. And I can only speak from my own experience. That seems to
Mhm.
really help my students kind of uh, help themselves with through the anxiety.
Yeah. Well, you know, one of the things that we use as a technology, really, I'd be curious. I don't know if this would relate to your gig or not, but there's a thing called the 1 point, right? And this is very interesting. Now, this is coming from the martial art kind of perspective, and also from the traditional Zen training perspective. And all of this would be like a pan-Asian intelligence, I guess you could say. You'd find the little thing I'm about to describe, it would be recognizable in most all Asian countries. And including Tibet and in India, you know, it's kind of like this. Anyway, the point is that if you unguided, most folks have their awareness firmly placed behind their eyeballs, and we're kind of up here steering around, you know, and we're like way up in the eyes, and then the body is just kind of hanging down there, and if it hurts or feels particularly good, we notice it, but generally we're way up here in our thinking, and then hands and stuff like that. And it turns out that one of the most important concepts common to all my various endeavors is called being centered, right? And this centered is not just like an affirmation, like I'm centered and I love it or something. It's actually a physical way of orienting the breath and the body. So it's demonstrably provable if a person is centered or not. It's not theoretical. It's an empirically verifiable state of being centered. And you can see this in somebody. Like if I have somebody standing or sitting there, you can do this sitting, and just have them kind of think up in their head and be aware of their nose, and you give them a little push on the side, they topple far more readily than if you have them take their awareness and put it down a little bit below their belly button. You know, like maybe about 3 fingers width below your belly button and in just a touch. Anatomically, there's nothing there but viscera and whatnot. But if you concentrate on that point and just let your awareness settle there for a little while, so you breathe down to that point, it's like there's a balloon way in the base here, and you let the breath kind of root. You take the same person and give them a little nudge on the side here, and they're far more like rooted about it, kind of like a tree with deeper roots all of a sudden. And so you have this thing called ki, or energy, right? And so if you put your mind in that 1 point and hold it there, then the energy starts to coalesce there or center there or root there, and then the body responds, you see. And so this point of centeredness is central to how I work with folks dealing with a stress response, because the stress response is exactly the opposite. You start freaking out and all your energy comes up your front side and way up here, and we start to pant and hyperventilate, things like this. So the teaching is to breathe low and deep and be rooted. Now, does
That's
that
that's
configure?
great. Yeah, yeah. Well, that's great. I think that's kind of. I mean, we talk about taking a low breath and that sort of thing, and I hear teachers say, you know, you want to be centered, but they're looking for balance, weight, equal weight of feet. I think that's a great way to experiment with being centered. When you say ki, Jay, is that the
Hmm.
same thing as I hear people who say chi,
Yeah,
chi?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. The way it is in Japan, it's pronounced ki,
Oh,
ki.
okay. Hmm.
In China, it's pronounced chi or qui, chi or qi. In
Hmm.
Tibet, it's pronounced lung, lung. It's a different root etymology than the other words. There are terms in German, and you know, it's not just an Indic thing, but yeah, it means energy basically, and it means awareness, life force, you know. And it's the funny thing about this is it's not a metaphysical assertion; it's simply an experience, you know. Does chi exist? I mean, I don't know. I don't even care. What I know is it works. That's what I know. If I take somebody and concentrate this way, their physical body responds differently than
Hmm.
if they don't. See, that's how that is. So, you know, whether or not the rubric of explanation is literally a fact is kind of irrelevant to me. I'm utilitarian about it. Is this helpful? Then let's go there. If it's not helpful, let's not. Because after all, son, you got a jury to do.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Yes, right. For sure. So tell us about the Buddhist temple. Is that what you call it, Jay? What do you call
Yeah.
it?
Yeah,
Okay.
it is. It is. Yeah. I mean, as far as it goes, I'm a Zen teacher and priest, and there's a Buddhist temple here in Toledo that my wife and I are kind of at the center of. It's one of the main sort of connectors in our wonderful marriage, for which I'm eternally grateful. We've been together since the Bronze Age, and she's just a wonderful, dynamic, wonderful lady, and I'm lucky to have her in my life. I feel incredibly blessed about that. And one of the things we had together, besides being best parents we can be and love each other intensely, is we've had this kind of mission to, help people with Zen practice. It's become, it was really important to me. I was lucky enough to stumble onto this thing when I was in a teenager, and it saved my life more than a few times, and her as well. And so it turns out that we've got a pretty thriving community here in Toledo, and it's a lot of folks that resonate with the kind of conversation we're having, but even a little more. I mean, the truth is, as I understand it, that mindfulness is like one very clear aspect that predated the Buddha. He didn't invent this stuff. And it's certainly not the only thing going in the Buddhist tradition. For those thinking about that stuff, Buddhism is a huge, big deal. There's all kinds of stuff involved in Buddhism. Mindfulness is like a piece of it. And it'd be rather like, going to the bagel shop and getting a nice kosher bagel. You didn't suddenly convert to Judaism. You're just enjoying a bagel. It's okay. It's fine. Or if you go and check out the Olympics, you aren't suddenly tethered to the Greek pantheon of old. It's so now you can do that if you want to. You can become Jewish, and that's a thing. If you want to, you can connect with the Greek pantheon. It might be fun. I don't know, but in the same way, mindfulness, this technique of simply paying attention to the moment, it's a chunk. It's a foundational chunk of what the Buddha taught. He didn't invent it. It's not all there is. There's way more than that. But it is like, it's kind of a central thing, because where Buddhism hangs its hat, so to speak, is on the alleviation of suffering. It doesn't claim any kind of revealed truth. It just says, I don't know, because honestly, it doesn't. It doesn't need to. What it focuses on is alleviation of suffering. And so, like like a psychologist might note today, look, if you're all crazy in the head, you're in a lot of hurt. So let's get centered, let's get calm, let's be in the moment, and then it can move on from there. See, so there are a lot of folks that connect to the Buddhist temple that have no self-identification as being Buddhist per se, but then there are a lot of folks that do, and so there are some differences there.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Mhm.
So let's talk about Zen Arts. Man,
Oh
do
yeah.
I miss that. And I can't I the very first time I ever sang with you is at the Toledo Art
Mhm.
Museum. And I was scared half out of my mind because I'm so used to rehearsal, rehearsal, rehearsal. That's my training and paradigm is that you rehearse until you could, you dream the thing because it's so ingrained in you, and then you perform it, and only then. So it was way out of my comfort zone. And but then by the second and third times that we did something, I was all in, and it was great. I want to play a little of it. I'm going to play, like, I have it up and ready to go, so I want to play a little of it. And I would love for you to just tell us when we listen to, we're not going to listen to it long, but just a little bit, like, how you came up with the idea, and what, and kind of tell us about it a little bit.
Sure.
Let's see. This is the Oh Seer. Pretty cool, isn't it?
Woo! Yeah, that takes me places.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So what were you thinking?
I wasn't. I wasn't. The thing is that well, my primary musical discipline is jazz music, all right. But my heart really is not even in playing jazz standards. I really, if I could just only play the music I wanted, that's all I do because gosh, there are people that can play standards way better than I'll ever be able to, and they did great, and I enjoy that music, and it's part of the vocabulary of the tradition and all that. But really, for me, getting together with musical peers and colleagues and betters and communing and creating this sound sculpture live in real time is really the juice for me. And I love that feeling of not knowing. And I don't really want to wrap it up into knowing. I actually enjoy and revel in not knowing and creating from the place of not knowing. But in order to do that, you have to have a hell of a lot of skill. You can't just willy nilly goof around there. Every one of us in that group has got a deep intimacy with various traditions of musical intelligence. And ears bigger than Mickey Mouse. That's what it takes to be able to hear and respond immediately and musically, and that's just fun. That's just fun. I just enjoy the experience of it. It's rather like our conversation. We have some sense. There's a general theme, but we're not planning out every sentence. Thank God. Imagine if we had to memorize this podcast to this point and reproduce it. That's a nightmare to me. I just,
We wouldn't be doing it. That's for damn
No,
sure.
no.
Nope.
but to get together and have a conversation, now that's juicy. But we all speak English. That's the thing. That
That
there
does
is
help.
yeah. So there's a vocabulary there. So I do bring to those concerts. I'll have some sketches of some musical ideas that I may or may not use, but y'all won't have heard them before.
Yeah, right.
Because the point is, if I even decide to use them, is how the group reacts to them in real time. And then it takes on its own life, and I just delight in that.
Talk about being in the present moment. There's no capacity to be wondering, what am I going to have for lunch, or in order to listen. I think when we've done all that rehearsing, we can tune out. Oh yeah, that's the oboe part. I'm coming in a bit. Okay, but if you're going to react to it and you don't know what's coming next, what a beautiful way for you to combine all of your interest.
For sure.
Yeah, I would say too that at the highest level, folk who make the more the leader and the art song and things that are more spelled out, I really do firmly feel I've been in the presence of people who make that kind of music at that kind of level where it is as though it was emergent from the universe right in that moment.
Yes.
So I like Yo-Yo Ma for my money. When this man plays, it's
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like it's as though no one's ever heard the Bach cello preludes before.
Right.
It's just like
Right.
whoa. Yeah, but what it takes is a lot of connection and an immense amount of empathy. You have to really be able to feel what the music is doing and basically disappear into it without ego. If you're concerned about making a statement or being the star or anything like this, then the sound sculpture gets kinked and it doesn't work. There's a whole lot of folks that I can't play that kind of music with. Too much ego, too much, and frankly, that's a downside of a lot of jazz musicians. To be honest, there's really great ones transcend that, obviously, but you're sort of mid-tier jazz.
Not just in jazz, Jay. Not just in jazz.
Yeah, well, there we are, the human condition, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Wow. Well, this has been great. We have to let you go, but I would encourage people to go out and maybe listen to the CD, get the CD. It's on iTunes, and where else is it? Is it on Spotify, or do
I
you know
think so. I
off the
think
top of your
so.
head,
And
Jay?
if folks want to connect with me and my work, I would hold up two resources: the Toledo Mindfulness Institute, ToledoMindfulnessInstitute.com. That's my sort of available to the world secular mindfulness teaching, and one of the things I didn't see coming with the pandemic was that I would learn how to do that entirely virtually. So the sort of flagship thing is a 6-week introduction to mindfulness that starts from zero and ends up with folks being pretty grounded and knowing how to actually engage this stuff in a meaningful way. So they happen on a rotating basis.
And is that something through the University of Toledo? I mean, do they have to enroll in classes to do that, or?
Nope, that was a limiting factor I found. I've got a venue to work with the students, undergrad and grad. I've got a venue to work with faculty, staff, and administrators on campus, but and I've got a venue for those interested in the Buddhist approach. Nothing for your average folk who just wants a secular mindfulness class that's informed by the tradition. So I created the Toledo Mindfulness Institute, and I run these classes. They're open to anybody. What'll happen is I'll get a chunk of school teachers, like a school system will say, hey, I can pay for 10 folks to do this, and educators who want can learn some of this stuff, or different corporations or individuals. So that's kind of a new feature,
That's
And
great.
the other thing I'd point to is the Buddhist Temple of Toledo podcast. For those who are interested in what that whole thing is about, there's just way too much of me talking there.
Yeah,
So,
well, it's good though. I've listened to it off and on throughout the last year or so. I'll catch some of it. It's very good.
I was amazed. Yeah, there's a lot on there. So
Yeah,
it gets something like 8,000 downloads a month at the moment. I mean, it's a pretty
that's
it's a pretty,
fabulous.
yeah, it's a pretty within that incredibly small and largely irrelevant niche. It's pretty well known.
I guess so. If we just could only have 8,000
yeah, what's the
downloads.
secret there? Do you have the
Come on,
mindfulness
people.
secret
Yeah.
for us that we can?
Yeah, I do. It's longevity and patience. I started that in 2007, and it's been accruing steadily and consistently, and evolving, and just patience and consistency over a long haul. That does a lot of good. People overestimate what they can do in a month or a season, and they completely underfigure what they can accomplish in a decade.
That's right. That's right.
That's true about everything, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Life, fitness,
absolutely.
health, mental.
Mhm. Mhm. Jay, now there is a second recording. Is that going to be a CD anytime soon?
It's funny you mentioned that because it's been in the vault, and I have had the thought that it would be interesting to release that somewhere around this, 2021. It's just kind of like been sitting there waiting. It's all but mastered as far as I know. So I do kind of have the thought to release the second concert, and if the stars align and the vaccine works and we can get down there and play, boy, I'd love to do concert 3 and add that to the queue.
That would be great. That'd be great. You'll let me know when that number 2 comes out, right?
Oh yeah.
I
Okay.
think that's a gentle Denise nudge. And I would agree that this would be a good time because people do have time to listen and they are tuned in to wanting inspirational things to listen to. So, yeah.
Well, not to give away the thunder, but we were playing that concert, and towards the very end, we were in the very throes of what's something like a cadenza. Boom, an alarm went off in the building.
Mm-hmm.
You remember that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the big, and what was so cool is that the whole band integrated that into the finale of the tune,
Wow,
of the
good
composition. It worked beautifully. It's amazing. It's just like you couldn't plan this, I think John
That's
Cage
cool.
smiled a little bit from wherever he was.
Yeah, that sounds like
Yeah.
it.
Oh, that's right. I forgot you studied with John Cage. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So really awesome. Thank you, Jay. I miss you.
I
Hope to
miss you
see you
too.
soon.
Beautiful. Nice to
Thank
connect
you.
in these. Tony, thanks. It was a
Thank
pleasure
you.
to be able to see you and say hello again.
You too. And thanks for the inspiration. And I know our listeners are going to enjoy it. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for listening. We are very grateful that you joined us today.
If you like this podcast, please subscribe, write a review, share it with a friend.